Hello, welcome to the first episode of our very new podcast, Thinking Too Much, the show where we talk about philosophy and other interesting concepts that we think about. I'm your host, Icarus, and I am joined by two very lovely guests, if you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
I'm Annika.
I'm Vanessa.
I love that. We have been friends for a long time. We love talking about this kind of stuff, and we, decided we're going to make a podcast about it today. Just as a quick, brief disclaimer, of course, we are not experts in this field at all. We just like talking about it and pretending that we're experts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, basically.
What makes an expert even?
Real. So today we're kind of just starting off our first episode talking about nihilism. If we have time, we might get into some stoicism and the butterfly effect, perhaps. This is a very short first podcast as it's for a school assignment, but maybe after this we can do longer episodes where we dive into the topics a little bit deeper. But without too much rambling at the start, because again, it is very short. What do you guys know generally about nihilism? Just kind of starting off the conversation.
What comes to mind for me is like the whole we're on a floating rock in space.
Yeah, absolutely. We're on a floating rock in space, so
oh my god,
we're
absence,
insignificant.
It's like an absence of belief, an absence of all the true world theories that people have thought up to cope with the fact that we are on a floating rock in space.
Yeah, because that's kind of crazy, obviously. So nihilism, it's typically more commonly associated with pessimism and just feeling like life has no meaning. But nihilism actually goes a lot deeper than that. We did some readings beforehand and we kind of found there's sort of 5 pillars, I guess, of nihilism, or 5 different things that go into nihilism. The first being existential nihilism, which is there's no set of moral codes holding us in place, so therefore there is no meaning to us. This one, I think, is probably most commonly associated with the Dostoevsky Crime and Punishment. That's where a lot of people reference this one, I think. There's also cosmic nihilism, which the universe is so vast and uncaring to what we do that nothing matters at all. This is a more extreme version of nihilism. And, sometimes people will go so far as to argue things like love and happiness are just pure distractions, they have no meaning. So this, I would say, is probably the most pessimistic.
That reminds me of the meme the meme that I found. Yeah. I'm gonna describe it to the audience real quick.
Yeah, for our audio listeners.
Nihilists be like, we use pleasure to distract ourselves when we can't find meaning. My brother in Christ, that pleasure is the meaning. And
Real.
then it's the Subway sandwich.
Yeah, the Subway sandwich. I'll put it up on the screen for our video viewers. Sorry, audio listeners. You just don't get
You're just going to have to...
You got to imagine.
Use your... Yeah, if you can't picture that in your head, that's on you, bro.
And then going on, there's ethical nihilism, which is similar to existential in that there is no right or wrong. But this goes further. It leads people to amoralism, which is the rejection of all moral principles. This one is probably also pretty closely associated with Crime and Punishment. People talk about that a lot. Egoism, where individuals should only be concerned with themselves. And then moral subjectism, where moral judgments are up to the individual rather than authoritarian sources like religion or politics and government and stuff. So
that whole pillar really kind of makes me it just in general. Yeah. I guess the amoral aspect of it, because I don't know how you would approach life then.
Yeah.
I guess for me personally, because I'm if you don't, I understand the one where it's rejecting society, a lot of society's views about what's moral, but just to be sort of rejecting all moral principles kind of seems, I'm then what?
It kind of reminds me of Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Yeah, definitely. It's again, the first one is there's no moral codes necessarily, but to reject the thing that there's no right or wrong, it's how are you even guided then?
Yeah.
By anything. So that one is definitely interesting. Then there's this one, which I looked up how to pronounce it. Epistemological nihilism.
Oh,
I
good.
believe.
That
I
was a
believe
good
that's what it is.
pronunciation.
Yeah, epistemological, I believe. That's the belief that knowledge is false because it's always based on opinions rather than fact. So nothing is really known and we should be skeptical of all things. I kind of like that.
I live my life by that, I think.
Like,
that was like me in like high school whenever I was like, man, you can't prove to me gravity's real.
No, I mean, true.
Yeah, and this is very applicable to like modern society because now it's like all the news sources we're getting. I just talked about this in my contemporary communication class where we discussed like people who are getting their news information from social media. Like you have to take it all with a grain of salt because, you know, there's nothing really proving that is true or false. You just have to kind of go off your own judgment. So definitely this one applies a lot.
I think too, like with that, not even just like where people get their news from, but like today, like in modern society, we're very like, just after the Enlightenment, we've been very much focused on like science too.
Yeah.
And like science being like, oh, that's true and that's the only thing we can really rely on. But a lot of times science, you can look at two different studies and they'll be claiming to prove the opposite of whatever thing. Like it's not necessarily proving something. It's more of like almost disproving. I don't know. I don't know.
That makes sense. The last sort of pillar is political nihilism, which is the tearing down of institutions that dictate how we live our lives. Again, like religion, government, sometimes even social clubs, which is based in the belief that institutions are inherently corrupt and we should question all higher authority.
That's so based.
Yeah, that is based. That I feel like that one's based, and I feel like the one that we just talked about was based.
Yeah.
The like moral, like amorality and like the egoism. That's where I'm like, at what point are you just like, oh, there's no point, so like it doesn't matter if like I'm a shitty person, but it's like, I'm like, at what, can I cuss?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like,
That's
hold
fine.
on a second. But it's like, okay, have fun, like not developing any meaningful relationships in your life. Like,
yeah,
like
but I
that,
guess to them there is no meaning anyways. So
yeah,
it's
so
like,
it's like, what is even the point? That I think is where for many centuries there's always been criticisms of nihilism, because it is traditionally associated with pessimism, and many people are very against being a pessimist, and for obvious reasons. I don't think that's necessarily bad.
I think they're different though. I don't think they're the same.
Yeah, I pulled a quote from an article from The Guardian titled Sunny Nihilism, and it says it's kind of arguing that nihilism might be important to modern societies with the way that we live. It says, when your existence is pointless, you shift your focus to things that have more longevity than your own ego. The person who wrote this said, I've become more engaged in environmental issues, my family, and the community at large. Once you make peace with just becoming a lump of meat on a rock, you can stop stressing and appreciate the rock itself. And so I think this is a very interesting way to look at nihilism. Because, again, when most people hear nihilism, they think, oh, the rejection of all things and that nothing has meaning. But that, like, kind of what your meme honestly said is, like the fact that there is no meaning gives you the opportunity to make your own meaning.
Yeah.
And I find that quite beautiful, personally.
I kind of want to quote, because this is, like, the quote whenever people are talking about nihilism. So I just think it's important to, like, bring it up. Absolutely. In general, the one where Friedrich Nietzsche, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? There's more to that quote than that, but I think it's interesting because when people think about nihilists in contrast to people who believe in, like, be it a religion or some sort of institution, whether that be political or whatnot, it's like they see nihilists and they're like, how could you want that? Like, how could you want to not believe in anything? But it's regretfully. Like, it's not like I find myself in tune with nihilism just, like, as being a product of my environment. I kind of feel like that's just kind of where I've ended up. But it's regretfully so a lot of the times where I really wish I had something like, you know, Christianity or like I was really like, I don't know, some of my friends are like, oh yeah, like I'm into like paganism and I'm into like whatnot. And it's like, damn, I wish I had that.
Yeah.
What are your kind of thoughts on nihilism, Vanessa?
I think it's interesting because it's kind of like bound to happen, like whenever like in the 18th century or whatever, like the rejection of like organized religion, when that was happening, like it's kind of like people were bound to, I guess, like try to find the deeper truth, like, oh, is God real? Is all of this like actually reality? I think it makes sense that some people were like, no. And then that turned into like, well, like if that's not true, then like what are we gonna have to hold ourselves here while we're here, you know?
Literally.
Like what are we gonna have to cope with the fact that, oh, we're here and there's not really anything we can do about it until we die.
Literally, that's why it's like God is dead and we killed him, and who's gonna wash that? Like, who's now going to wash that blood from us if we killed God? And it's not talking specifically about like Christianity. It's talking just in general. Yeah, but damn,
I think a lot of this always reminds me of this quote, and I don't remember exactly who said it, but I believe I heard it from Hank Green or John Green, one of the Green brothers who does the Vlog Brothers.
They're the same.
They are the same person, really. And I don't remember exactly how the quote goes, but like the only thing that is like logical to our like meaningless and illogical existence is to like love others. And like finding happiness with that. And I know that's not exactly how the quote goes. That's kind of the gist of it. And a lot of that is kind of closely associated with nihilism. And so while nihilism isn't necessarily like a religion that you follow, like that you hold, but it's something that you can maybe keep in the back of your mind. Like I notice sometimes when I'm like feeling really down and I'm like, oh my God, nothing has meaning. I have to like tell myself, well, that's your job then. You have to go find yourself meaning, because it is all like a little bit weird. Like we are just flesh on a rock hurtling through space, and nothing is certain. Like tomorrow isn't guaranteed, so like
exactly
make the most of what you have right now.
And I think like with nihilism, it kind of allows you to create your own like intrinsic moral code, which is like really important, I think. Like, I mean, because if you follow like a religion, it's kind of set out for you. But if you don't have that, then obviously it's like you kind of have to create it yourself. But I think that's cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I can see why people who are fans of organized religion would maybe be a little bit against nihilism, because it's kind of
also because Nietzsche in general, like some of his works, he kind of like beat on Christianity, beat it down. So I definitely understand people being like, oh my God, this guy's like the Antichrist. Like,
especially back then, like
for sure.
Him saying God is dead.
Think
about that. Remember that movie God's Not Dead?
With the guy from 13 Reasons Why.
Oh my God. No, he was from Good Luck Charlie too.
Oh,
what, he was?
No, I don't think he was the guy from 13 Reasons Why. I think it was the guy from
Spencer.
Spencer
he
from
was.
Good Luck Charlie.
Dude, they look the same.
They do.
Well, there's not really a whole lot of time to get anything else. This is a very restrictive time limit, so there's not a whole lot of time to elaborate. Any final kind of closing thoughts? We got about 40 seconds.
Nihilism is cool. No, I don't know.
He was kind of based for that.
He was kind of based. Yeah, for sure. And again, we're not experts. We are just talking. We just think too much, as the title of this podcast suggests, and we just like sharing our thoughts. And maybe we'll have some more episodes of this in the future for just some fun things for my own personal work when it's not for an assignment. But thank you guys so much for coming out here. And
of course,
thank
you.
Yes, I hope to see you guys next time for Thinking Too Much.
Hell yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.